G'day, welcome to a lens of intelligence through Amblyopia. Welcome to the workshop. Let me start with introducing myself. I'm Firas Peterson. I'll be your host, your facilitator through this workshop. And I'm just going to start off with asking everyone to introduce themselves, as well as we're going to set up some expectations, outcomes, objectives, goals for what we want to achieve and learn through this workshop. And we've provided flipcharts and markers for this purpose. Now we just want to have a look at the program for the workshop. Please take note of the times. We'll be channeling three main topics in the workshop, that being multiple intelligences, emotional intelligence, as well as learning styles. To start off with multiple intelligences, what we're looking at here is the different ways in learning. So Howard Gardner put forward this multiple intelligences theory, and with this definition according to Marinas in 2020, we can see that its definition is that the intelligence that was based on a variety of scientific disciplines. It said Gardner wrote that it may have all the intelligences in a specific, but the profile of this intelligence may differ based on a wealth of different reasons, but he specified genetics and experience. So what are the intelligences that we can look at? Right, so we can take a look at one as an example, and that could be of the interpersonal intelligences. So the personal intelligence-based theory says to us that it's how people understand people. Being able to understand why people do certain things, predict and motivate, as well as look at the prediction and look at the reasoning and motivation of why actions are done, and using that format of intelligences. All right. So that is as a definition as to what is the multiple intelligences or multiple intelligences theory. So we need to look at how this invokes into the classroom or how it pairs into the classroom. So first we're looking at that for some of the subjects that we cover in our schooling, such as mathematics and logic, that is how it gets included, as well as for linguistic intelligences, we have languages. We also have the ability to enable learners to work alone or to have the choice of working in groups because they need to work in a way that they are comfortable. As well as we need to consider that for the assistance of learners with visual impairments or barriers, we need to change the way we perform our lessons so that we tap into the different intelligences that these learners have. So now we talk that we have a visual intelligence for visual intelligence. People is able to see things a certain way. Learners with visual barriers, they struggle with this, and it also impacts them for their linguistic intelligences. It's not to say that they don't possess the linguistic intelligence, because many of them might have the ability to string words together in a beautiful way. But when it comes to reading, they struggle with that. So we can then make use of some auditory tools, where they, instead of reading a book, they can listen to a book. And we'll see how this comes into play as we go through some of the other topics as well. So as an activity on the multiple intelligences, and I've listed them here in this table. Now what we're going to be looking at is, I want you to look at how does it impact a learner with visual barriers. So we're going to chart out, and we're splitting the workshop classroom into two groups, and I want you to use the flip charts to merely go ahead and for every type of intelligence, we can see the characteristics that's listed next to them. But I want you to see how it impacts the learners with visual barriers. Now, the impact does not need to be negative only, or it does not have to say how the learner misses out on this. It can also be an impact on how it improves the learner's ability to learn, and more importantly, how sharpening these intelligences assists the learner so that the visual barrier is not such a big impact on the ability to learn. Coming on to our second topic, and it's something that we either have as people or we developing it, but it's something that's very personal or specific to every different individual. And that is emotional intelligence, or we shorten it, we call it EI. So what is EI? It's the ability to use one's emotional part of the brain to help improve the outcomes of learning in the classroom setting. So we can look at this from a social perspective where we can help learners and adults. And just as a little definition or to answer the question as to what is EI, I took this little excerpt from Trippity in 2018 where he wrote, in the course of the last, emotional intelligence concept has become very important, indicator into the person's knowledge, skills, and ability in workplace, school, and personal life. So when we talk about the emotional intelligence, we're looking at different competencies that a person has in order to balance the emotional side of the spectrum. And that we're going to tackle in our next slide. So using EI in the classroom. Right? We use EI to control the emotions in the classroom. And I'm not referring to people being happy or sad or upset, frustrated only. I'm merely talking about you have both educators and learners having this understanding that yes, you are allowed to have emotions and feel a certain way, but in managing them so that it doesn't go out of control, so that you make sure that learning still takes place during this. It can also assist with managing stress because now what you're creating is you're allowing learners to express emotion. You as the educator also expresses emotion, but now you're able to control it and manage it. And this is how you manage some of the stress levels in the classroom. And then what we need to understand is that when we're in control, it then creates this smooth sort of harmony in the classroom. And just as according to Phenomenon 2012, these are some of the EI competencies. And specifically, these competencies, what we want to see in a teacher or an educator pull off in the classroom. So for the four different sections, we have the self-awareness, social awareness, the self-management, and the relationship management. Having the ability to tap into some of these competencies is what we look for in educators to assist them with keeping emotional intelligence available and present in the classroom. So our EI activity will consist of us in your groups simply just looking at the competencies and provide examples of how it can assist learners with visual barriers. Because we have to look at the aspects of learners with visual barriers, they're going to have those emotions. So how can we use those competencies to assist them? And we'll look at some of the ideas that you guys come up with and see if it's something that we can put forward. And then understanding the learning styles. So this is our final topic for this workshop. And it's the one that speaks most into the assistance of our learners with visual barriers. So what we're looking at is what is learning styles? So we can understand that everyone learns in different ways. We have some people who are more We can learn more from a picture than from 10 sentences. We have people who can learn better from sentences than from a picture. We have some people who need to listen to you explain something rather than having to read it, as well as you have some learners who want to feel, touch, experience, rather than just having someone tell them what they should be, what it feels like, or what the object is that they may be trying to explain. So that is how we're looking at the learning styles for this topic. So now we want to bring this into context for helping learners with visual barriers. So we want to take advantage of the ability that there is different learning styles within learners. And this is the most important was that you may not possess all the learning styles, but you possess a combination of them. But for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to be looking at three learning styles that we want to make use of to assist learners with visual barriers. First being the auditory learning style. So as I said earlier on, making use of audiobooks, auditory assessments. Instead of having the learners write a comprehension, they could give us an oral. For kinesthetic learning style, it's more to do with the movement of the body. But here what I'm referring to is instead of having to look at a square, it would be assisting the learner with the visual barrier. If you could actually let them feel what an object that is square shaped feels like. And the same goes for a circle, and the same goes if you want them to feel something soft versus something hard in texture. Something soft or something rough. And then we come into the topic of group work. So group work can really assist learners with visual barrier because now they have a peer that they can rely on to do the parts that they may be struggling with, i.e. the reading or making use of any visual interpretations or intelligences. So for this final activity to end of the day, we're going to ask each group to produce a lesson and an assessment idea in where they can use these learning styles. So I've already mentioned in terms of what, but think about this. It doesn't have to be a full lesson plan, but just think of some of the lessons that you do. If we take, for example, if it's just, you know, doing a little experiment or whatever the case may be, how can you use predominantly auditory based learning styles or auditory based lessons to assist learners and do the same lesson? Same goes for group work. How do we turn where learners might be working individually into group work to assist them, as well as the kinesthetic side of it? And if we want to, we can also look at how we can integrate some of these learning styles so that you have a combination of learning styles to assist learners. And finally, I just want to say thank you again. We're going to check our outcomes, see that we reach our objectives and goals for the day. Any questions, feedback, feel free to give to me now, or if you want to write it down, you're welcome to get it to me in writing. And I really appreciate honest feedback. And then once again, thank you for coming.